I'm delighted to welcome back DS Steven Bertram from Police Scotland to the second podcast with regards to policing in Scotland and the work that's been done across the country with regards to prevention, convictions and updates and what he's seen. So thank you, Steven, for joining me again this morning.
No, morning, Shannon. And listen, thanks for having us along. It's really good. Enjoy the catch-ups, actually. It's good just to get a chat and see what's going on. But thanks for having me back. Appreciate it.
Oh, having you back. And actually, Stephen, there's been some requests when the next podcast was, so you're starting to become well known. So
embarrassing, but excellent.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Well, a lot's been going on from a Scotland against modern slavery perspective, but it doesn't even come into touch when we start talking about what's happening in policing, Stephen. So tell me a little bit about what you and the team have been seeing over the last 6 months in Scotland then.
No, sure. So I'll maybe start off again, Shan, just to give an overview of some of the figures, and as we probably mentioned in the last one, the science that we use behind it is the National Referral Mechanism, or the NRM data, and this is really just the figures are really people that are consenting to enter the NRM, but they've gone up year on year on, and this year, no surprises that the numbers they're up again. So far. In 2024 in Scotland, we've had 787 people that have entered into the NRM as potential victims of trafficking in Scotland, and that's an increase of 200 people over the full of last year. And we've still obviously got at the end of the year to go, so I think there'll be a bumper year. And out of that, out the NRMs, we're still seeing like the highest percentage of nationality that we see in the NRM are the Vietnamese nationals, and we know that there's a whole catalogue of abuse that we probably cover through the podcast, and some drug production, cultivation, labour exploitation in nail bars. We see the second highest nationality is Albanian, and then we also see Iranian nationals. There's been a wee spike in that actually. And we also see our own UK nationals, but a lot of the data there, it's interesting to see that, but there's a lot of data, going on what we're investigating in terms of what we're coming across. It probably doesn't quite tally with that with some of the nationalities, and I still think that there's certain nationalities, like the Romanian, a lot of Romanian victims were probably just under-recorded on the NRM process, but certainly from what we're seeing, I think there's a real footprint for them there.
Interesting. That's really interesting what you're saying. So you're saying there's certain nationalities where there's not a perception, that there's a significant amount of exploitation going on, but they're not seeing it being reported.
Absolutely, and I guess we come back to that sort of NRM process. It is somebody that consents, and a lot of people, for a multitude of reasons, won't consent, whether they don't think they're a victim of trafficking or they're maybe too scared to say that they're a victim of trafficking, all in the exploitation. But it's something, I'm always just a bit nervous when we talk about the figure, saying that it's been 787 is a lot of people. That's a lot of people in Scotland that are potential victims of trafficking. But that definitely doesn't tell us the full picture of what's happening. I think that number's a lot more than that, which is a real worry. And there are certain nationalities, I think, that are underrepresented within that, which... And to give you a kind of snapshot, from the police side, we've got several kind of live investigations that are ongoing just now, over a real kind of diverse range of different types of trafficking. So we've seen there was the BBC documentary that ran, I think it was last month, into the slavery at sea. It was really interesting. But that's another part of what it's not that the same firm that featured there, but there's other work that's ongoing that we're looking at, further slavery within the fishing industry. So that's part of what we're looking at. We've got quite a lot of investigations ongoing with serious and organised crime, looking at sexual exploitation. We see a lot of women being exploited. The majority that we're seeing just now are Romanian women, and we see the exploiters being, Romanian serious and organised crime groups. So that's all going as we speak. We've seen some Bulgarian crime groups operating in Scotland as well for the same thing, round about that sexual exploitation. We're keeping an eye on the care sector, because we know that I know you've done that roundtable. It was really useful for you to pull that together, Shan. It was a good timing, actually, just to put that in everybody's radar. And since then, I've certainly been keeping a close looking at, and I know our colleagues in the Home Office are as well. There's a bit of crossover between what's human trafficking, what becomes, immigration type exploitation as well. So, but it's there, it's happening. So we're keeping a close eye on that, and we're also just trying to we're at a time of year. It was 3 degrees yesterday, the other morning driving to work, so I think winter's upon us. It was a short summer. So we normally see, the agricultural side. We get a lot of people coming to Scotland at the start of spring, probably leaving about now actually to go home.
Right.
But that's a real hotspot, a time of, we're making sure that those people are looked after when they're here. They're not working long hours, their accommodation's right, and there's a sense that there's exploitation taking place there. So
That's interesting. I mean, you're just touching on you talk about the crosses over from being a policing issue and immigration issue with the care sector, and that is what we're seeing. And interestingly, we've got the next couple of Sam's roundtables coming up, but one on the 25th of October with Unseen, the National Slavery Non-Slavery Helpline, sorry. And they're going to talk about what they're seeing, but also what I understand is the reporting through the Modern Slavery Helpline is relatively low, comparatively speaking, to the rest of the nations in the UK, and they're trying to raise a bit of awareness of it. So crossovers relevant. Can I ask you, Stephen, then, with prosecutions that you can talk about, what have you seen? Because I remember in the last podcast you were talking about some of the investigations that were going on. Can you talk about what's been happening in the last 6 months?
absolutely. So we've got a lot of investigations that are currently sitting with Crown now for consideration. So they're with our colleagues in the Crown Office Procurator Fiscal Service. So those ones I can't touch on just now, but there's a good section of those. It'd be good if they were continuing the podcast. Hopefully they will go through the court process and we talk about them in a bit more detail, actually. But going back to the start of the year, we had a really good conviction, very similar to what some of the inquiries are looking at just now, but it was a Romanian serious and organised crime group operating in Scotland, bringing a lot of Romanian women into Scotland and basically exploiting them into prostitution. So there was a lot of work done with the Romanian police to get them back to Scotland for trial, for that extradition kind of piece. And after trials, they were found guilty of serious and organised crime and brothel keeping. So the group, and there was three individuals, 2 males, 1 female. The oldest was 53, the youngest was 28. They were convicted of that, and they all got a range between sort of 30 and 32 months in prison and custody. So it was a really good result to get that. It was really positive to start to make those convictions, and that's where certainly for us our focus is to keep trying to push those cases through and send quite a strong message across to the organised crime groups. If you're going to come to Scotland, we are looking at you, we will police you, and we want to continue them. Going through that process would be great.
And just picking up what you said, to get that prosecution, you had to work closely with Romanian policing as well. And I understand historically they had, at Police Scotland, there was a couple of officers from the Romanian police that were embedded in the unit. Is that right, if I remember that correctly?
No, you're spot on, Shan. Yeah. So this year we were successful in getting funding from Home Office and from the Romanian embassy to bring Romanian police officers to Scotland. So our 2 officers arrived with us at the middle of March, and they left us at the start of July. And then both myself and my colleague, who's the SIO here at the NHTU, we both travelled to Bucharest in July to meet with the officers and also their teams. It's a really important part of policing that makes the world a small place. And certainly my time here, I don't think we've ever worked closer with the Romanian police. And I'm really keen that continues due to the level of kind of exploitation and investigations that we're seeing here. But it was really successful, and again, it kind of benchmarks, I guess, for us. We'll keep an eye on all the nationalities that we're seeing getting exploited. If that comes with more and more investigations, it's absolutely really important for us to engage with that local policing force and say, can we work closely with you?
Right. Okay, that's a really interesting part of what's going on. With regards to the NRM, just taking that figure, the snapshot figure, that's a kind of, unfortunately, it's a ready reckoning of where we sit. And I think historically going back, I can always remember saying this year was a record number in comparison to the highest number ever recorded in Scotland. We are now heading for the highest number ever recorded in Scotland of potential victims and have been referred. So if it's 787 and we're in the 27th of September, we're going to be close to 1,000 possibly then by the end of the year.
Yeah. I think that's, we've seen, there's days that we've come on here in the unit here, they pick up on all the NRMs, the National Human Trafficking, so they do the triage of all those, and there's certain days we've come in and we're seeing 10, 11 overnight being referred in, and it's a real eye-opener, just making, just seeing the volume of what's coming into us, and the different types of exploitation that's happened to us, which is a real worry.
Well, okay. I mean, sobering listening to it. Let me think about what's coming then. What do you see coming over the next year, next 6 months? I'm picking up on what you said about the care sector, but what do you see about the future?
So I think we will work, intelligence led is probably the way we need to be. That intelligence that exists within various sectors in the community. From I think that our public and organisations in Scotland are getting much better at understanding what human trafficking is. I think they're much better at wanting to report that in now as well. I have a bit of confidence in reporting, and I think there's still a bit more that we could do with that. And I would be talk at the end. You've already mentioned unseen, but it might be quite helpful at the end of this. We can maybe put a couple of different ways of reporting into Police Scotland or directly about those concerns, which would be really useful. And I think we use that intelligence to kind of shape and say, as much as I absolutely despise them, that the serious and organised crime groups in there are absolutely toxic. They exploit the most vulnerable people, but unfortunately they're very good at what they do. And I think it's we've already seen that with that whole there's a gap in recruitment for care homes, so therefore an SOCG steps in, tries to fill that void, and ultimately we've got exploitation that's taking place, and that will continue wherever there's demand. Whether that's the sexual exploitation side, where there's demand, serious and organised crime groups are happy to come in and try and make a lot of money out of this and exploit people. So for us, it's about trying to keep a finger on the pulse, trying to stay, if we can, one step ahead of the crime groups, understand what they're looking at, what their focus is, and then basically our goal at that point is then to try and make that as hostile as possible for them to operate in that space. I suspect, seeing what we're seeing, but I think we'll continue to see a rise in sexual exploitation, around about crime groups. So we've looked at adult services websites, being used by the crime groups to advertise a lot of women. We see those adverts moving about a fair bit, and it's a real focus for us about how we police that space and how we get involved in that space. And also part of that wider Scottish Government work about reducing demand. It's about what we can get involved in there, because it's quite clear to me that a lot of the women on that space that are being exploited there, that they're not there because they want to be there. They're being exploited, and it's about how we try and get that message across and how we police it. When there's a lot of work ongoing, I think through all the investigations that we're doing, those convictions that we're seeing, that if you're going to do that, then we will catch up with you and we'll hopefully put you in prison, which is the goal here. The labour exploitation is still a concern. We still see that labour exploitation, unfortunately, and I think again our good members of the public out there, seeing eyes and ears on the ground. If nail bars, if we've got concerns, report it. At a car wash, report it. And it gives us an opportunity to go in and intervene and potentially take someone that's being exploited and give them a better opportunity in life. We see the forced criminality piece. I don't think that's going away. So we're still seeing organised shopliftings. We see the organised begging, forced begging. So that's lining somebody's pockets, and it's normally, the crime group is not the poor soul that's sitting on the street. It's not the poor soul that's maybe tending the plants in a cultivation. There's a much higher rung that sits behind that. And obviously we kind of spoke about that kind of prostitution side, that forced prostitution space. So I think over the next 6 months, we'll see that. I'm hoping that we've got enough work. Our partners are great that we work with, and I think that's absolutely key, getting that information. It's like same with but it's probably links that we didn't have previously, and I'm sure now that if there was abuse in the fishing industry, that somebody would pick up the phone to the unit and say, can I report this to, and it's the same in other areas of exploitation. I think there's a good route into Police Scotland now, and a dedicated unit that will take that on and progress it. So, and as you said, Shan, I don't think it's going to go away. I think it's going to. whether it's increasing or whether just getting better at identifying it, it's just two different things we need to look at there. And I think there is a big part of people are understanding human trafficking a lot better, than what we did years ago.
Absolutely, I think the awareness is getting further and further into society, isn't it? And that's the one thing I think about what we're in Scotland Against Modern Slavery. It started off as a business organisation raising awareness in the business community, but actually there's a bigger job to be done with regards to generally, I think, for everyone about raising awareness of it. And what I perceived was the concept back a number of years ago, well, it doesn't happen in Scotland, it's fine, it doesn't happen here. The figures speak for themselves, and as you say, we're just scratching the surface really by the looks of things. So really, really insightful again for another update on policing in Scotland, Stephen, and a little bit of a sight into the future, so that's much appreciated. Thanks very much for your update. We'll catch up again, no doubt. We'll time it again. We'll get together at the start of the year, possibly, Stephen, and we'll get a kind of overview of what's been going on and maybe have an update in convictions, which is, again, really, really positive to hear that people are being jailed for this, which is great. Absolutely great.
No, thanks again, and thanks for having me along again, Shannon. I look forward to catching up with you again in the future.
Thank you.